Welcome to International Love Story, the podcast about long distance and multicultural relationships. My name is Christina, and to those of you who are following us since quite a while already, you might know that we're traveling full-time in a camper van. So this is why, for you guys here on YouTube, the background changed a little bit. Right now we are in Sweden, we're enjoying our time here, but obviously this is not what this episode is going to be about. Eventually, at some point, I'm going to share some travel content with you guys here on YouTube as well. But in this episode, we're going to talk to Zuzana. And Zuzana moved 12 years ago. She moved from the Czech Republic to Africa, met the love of her life there. Everything just actually didn't went as expected. She had other plans, but this is definitely a story she can tell a little bit better than I could. And what we're also going to talk about in this episode is the struggles of an intercultural relationship. We're going to talk about stereotypes. We're going to talk about what to do when being homesick. Enjoy today's episode. And I don't want to take too much of your time. So if there's a specific topic you'd be interested in, you will always find the timestamps in the YouTube description below. And today I'd like to welcome Zuzana. Zuzana is in Zambia right now with her little family. She moved there a couple of years ago, and she has obviously a great story to tell as well, which we're going to get into right now. So I'd like to give a warm welcome to Zuzana. Thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, thank you, Christina. And I'm excited to be here and to share my story with everybody who is listening.
As mentioned, you, Zuzana, you moved to Zambia a couple of years ago. What I'd be interested in, like, how your story started. What brought you to Zambia?
Yeah, so I moved to Zambia basically 8 years ago, or at that time I didn't move here. I just came for work, and I thought I will stay maybe 1 year, 2 years, and from that became 8 years. But maybe let me take you even farther. And how did I even get to Africa? Because that's what is quite surprising, because I never wanted to go to Africa. It was not on my radar. I was always interested in Asia. My dream country was Mongolia. But I was on my Erasmus in Sweden, which is one of the countries I really love, Sweden. You see, I'm more oriented on the north and the east, not the south. And I met my, at that time, boyfriend. We were in love, and shortly after we started dating, he got his first job in Africa, in Uganda. I loved it. And after the 4 weeks, I went back to Czech Republic to finish my bachelor degree. And after I graduated, I moved to Kampala, to the capital of Uganda, to be with him. And I started working there. I remained there 2 years, working in the northeast of Uganda. And should I jump now into the Zambia, or you want to know more about Uganda?
No, share everything with us. What you would like to share. Anything you think might be interesting for everyone who is listening and for everyone who's watching right now.
Okay, so let me remain a bit in Uganda because it was my first Africa, as I say. I have never been in Africa before. I didn't know anything. And then suddenly I was living in this far region. I stayed in the capital for about 3 months, but then he was working with an NGO, and we moved to the Karamoja region. At the time where we were living there, they were still living in very traditional way. So they were wearing the traditional clothes, the beads. Their staple food was basically milk mixed with the cow blood. Basically, after 2 years living in this region, I felt I need a change, and I started applying for jobs. So at the time, I sent CVs everywhere. I remember sending CVs to Turkmenistan, to Lebanon, Zambia, and I got a job in Zambia.
How old were you, may I ask? Sorry for interrupting at that
Yeah,
time,
I
because
think
it sounds very adventurous.
So at that time when I was in Uganda, I think I have to calculate. I was 23. Yeah, because 23. And when I moved to Zambia, I was 26. So somewhere, yeah. So 26 when I came to Zambia, and I came to work with one NGO from the Czech Republic, and I was to live in one of the refugee settlements in Zambia, working with former Angolan refugees and Zambians. So I fell in love with the country because Zambia it's quite different than in Uganda. And I felt everything is so easy. It was suddenly it was much more easier to talk to people because in Zambia people speak much more English compared to Uganda. So I think that can be one of the factors. And also when I was in Uganda, I was quite a lot in that kind of expatriate culture. So lots of people who were working there, they were expats. They came there for 1 year or 2 years, then they moved, and all this was changing. But in Zambia, I made lots of Zambian friends and also Czech friends. Like surprisingly, there is a good number of Czech women mostly, but who live here. So it was very different, and it felt more stable. And the first 1.5 years, I lived in the middle of the refugee settlement in the northwest of Zambia, and it was amazing experience. I left in between, but I always kept coming back until basically when I came back in 2017. That was 3 years later, and since then I am living here.
So when you moved to Zambia, you said you found a job there, and the job was it a permanent job, or was it just limited for a couple of years? How did it work back then?
At that time, I think the contract was for 1 year with the possibility of extension. So I remember after 1 year I extended, and then that's when the story gets a bit more complicated. And at that time, in the beginning, when I was in Zambia, I was still with that boyfriend who brought me to Africa. He was from Italy.
Your boyfriend at that point, he didn't move to Zambia with you?
Yeah, that's the thing.
Okay.
So we lived together in Uganda, and our agreement was that because I followed him to Uganda, and our agreement was that when I find job, he will follow me. So I moved to Zambia, and he was supposed to come a few months after, but he didn't. He decided, like, he found better job, and he moved at the time to South Sudan. And we were having basically long distance relationship, and that's when things start to fall apart. So eventually we were still together. We got married in between when I was in Zambia, and then I decided, okay, since we got married, I'm moving to Tanzania. So I moved to Tanzania. I quit the job I had in Zambia. And basically after 2 months, I think I moved to Tanzania. I was like, no, this is not working. The relationship was not going well. I was missing Zambia so much. So I left to Czech Republic, trying to take some time to think what to do next. I still came back to Tanzania. We tried to fix the relationship, but then eventually it didn't work out, and we broke up. And after we broke up, I went back to Zambia, and shortly after that, I met my current husband, who is from Zambia. Yeah,
that's quite a story, I must say. So, but in between, you said you moved back to Czech Republic, and you lived there for quite a while, or did I misunderstand?
No, I just went there, I think, for 1 month to
Okay.
figure out things and visit my family to spend Christmas there. So my plan, basically, I realized it's been 12 years, I think, since I didn't live in Czech Republic from like now 12 years. So I just went there for a short time, then I went back to Tanzania. But then after we broke up, I moved back to Zambia. Like now 12 years. So I just went there for a short time, then I went back to Tanzania. But then after we broke up, I moved back to Zambia.
Your heart is in Zambia, and as you mentioned, you met your nowadays husband. I don't think I'm spoiling with that. But how did this happen? Like, did you move to Zambia and right away you got to know each other? Or like, how did you get to know each other, first of all?
Yeah, so I mentioned there is number of Czech women who live in Zambia. So I had a friend in a city where we live right now, and we went out. She invited some of her friends because she runs like a movie festival here, and she invited some of her friends who were doing some performances for her. And my husband was one of them because he, among other things, he is a choreographer and he dances salsa. So we basically just went for drinks and we never stopped talking. Yeah.
Wow. And when you think back, like, was it love at first sight for you guys, or did it take a while?
Yeah, I think we never stopped talking from that time. And I remember we spent the night, well, maybe I was drinking, my friends were drinking, my partner was not drinking because he doesn't drink alcohol. So you can't blame it on alcohol, as people would think. But we basically spent the whole night talking and dancing. And the day after, he invited me. That's one of the arguments we have up to now, because he keeps claiming it was not a date and I keep saying it was a date.
Okay.
So he invited me, and we just never stopped talking.
Oh, this is lovely. And that happened in which year?
It was 2016.
And look at you, you're still in Zambia, 12 years in Africa. Before we keep on talking about how it developed from there, what happened afterwards, where you are nowadays, I would like to know, because for me, it seems like you do have a very, very, very strong connection to Zambia. It feels like, after what you were telling, that it felt home quite fast. What I would like to know is, what do you like most about Zambia? Like, what is the feeling you're having when thinking about Zambia, when talking about Zambia? So what is it that makes you so passionate about it?
Sometimes, as we say, there are things between the sky or the heaven and the earth, like that we cannot really explain. So I think it's one of them, because since I was 2 years in Uganda and I loved it, but I loved it in a different way. So Zambia, it feels like, I remember the first time when I was supposed to leave to Tanzania, I was in the airport and I felt like I will not even go to the plane because I almost started crying. It was so hard to leave. At that time, of course, my life now is different when I'm married than when at that time I just had a boyfriend. So it was kind of different. And I was much younger. I didn't have a child. So that Zambia of that times of 2014, 15, 16 is very different than what it is now, including the experience. But at that time, as I said before, it was so easy to make friends. The people were easygoing. You can really speak easily to a taxi driver, to the ladies in the market, in the town, in the villages. It's different, to all sorts of people. And also at that time, what I loved also with my girlfriends when we were young and maybe a bit wild, was the music and going out. And we always say that Zambian men well, I wanted to say diplomatically, but I don't know there is a way of saying it diplomatic. They are very handsome and they know how to dress. They know how to talk to women. So they are like very good company. Basically, if you go out for dinner or you go out dancing, it's at that time it was really fun to be here and to have friends. And the other thing I love, and it's connected to when I was young, I wanted to study biology. I wanted to study flowers. I love flowers. And somehow I really love the landscape and the nature of Zambia. And I mentioned I lived in the refugee camp. I was the only like foreigner like from Europe in the like huge area full of refugees, and it was one of the greatest job I ever had, and it was one of the places I felt so safe to be living there alone. And I'm the kind of person who was always scared to stay in a house in Czech Republic alone. So there it was kind of in the bush. I used to go out like to watch the flowers and the tree, and there is something like about the different season. I love September. For example, in Zambia it's kind of autumn, so it's everything is dry, everything is dusty. You see the trees are brown with the dust, and I just love that period. And every time I come back to Zambia from Czech Republic, for example, when I travel to see my parents, it's like this feeling that like I feel like I'm home. It's difficult to explain, but it's just there.
No, it's just interesting, like if you're sitting in Zambia right now, we're talking how crazy it is that things just develop in such a direction. And you're sitting there, and I guess there are moments in your life where you're like, wow, how did I even get here? Like, what a crazy story. Like, I could have never imagined that some point in my life I will be in Zambia, I will be married, I will have a beautiful kid, and I'm feeling home. For me, it's always incredible to listen to other stories, because this is what I see a lot, that over the experience you're making, especially when moving abroad, you're learning so much about yourself, you're learning so much about another culture, and like you just go wherever life is taking you. And in your case, life brought you to Zambia, and I do think it's absolutely crazy to me, and I love it so much. Just like, yeah, my little heart is like, oh, it's so big right now.
Yeah, it's crazy actually, because I remember when I got the job in Zambia, I didn't know anything about the country. The only thing I knew about is that my friend who was from Czech Republic and she was living in Uganda at that time, she went there, she went to Zambia for holidays for the famous Victoria Falls, and she got bitten by a baboon. So that was the only thing I knew about Zambia.
Oh, they're quite mean, those baboons.
Yeah, they're crazy. Yeah. Like, and at the Victoria Falls, there are many, like in a big group. So every time, especially after knowing this story that my friend was bitten by them, I was like, no, I don't go anywhere closer to them.
I hope your friend is fine, first of all.
Yeah, she's fine. It happened many years ago. Okay. She's fine. But what I wanted to say is, as you were talking about, like when we move abroad and the life bring us wherever, I just want to say, like I was describing how I love Zambia, and it's true, but there are the days when it's hard. And I think all of us who live in abroad experience this. And I think it's important to acknowledge that it's normal, that there will be always days when we feel like what I'm doing here, and it's hard. Like there are things which are hard, which would be easier somewhere else, or you miss. That's what I discovered when I created a community around me with women who live abroad also, that we miss like those good friends we have from high school, that those friends, you just go for coffee, you can chat for 3 hours and she understand everything. And sometimes like here I find it quite difficult to find friends, which is kind of paradox, because I was saying in the beginning when I was young and when I was well, I wanted to say single, because in Zambia, if you are not married, you're basically single, even if you have a boyfriend. It was very easy to have friends, but now when you are married and have a kid, it's quite difficult. And for example, I miss like my best friend, my good friends. So I just wanted to say that sometimes it's hard and there are things which are difficult, but still the positives, I think, overweight the negatives, and that's why we are here.
What do you do when you get homesick?
My parents, my sister, my grandparents, they are in Czech Republic, and those closest friends I have basically from high school, which even if I see them once a year or once every 2 years, we are still like, that the gap was not there. So this kind of, all of my friends are there. And I think you were asking what I do when I become homesick. I think, it will suck in the moment. For me, what helps me is that it will pass. Like usually the day after, when you sleep over, like you will feel better. And usually what I do, I try to connect, like these days we have WhatsApp, we have Skype, we have anything. And it's actually quite amazing just that the world changed in such a short period, because I remember when I lived in the refugee settlement here in Zambia, I had just the old Nokia with no internet, and with my then boyfriend, we were just sending messages on the phone and email, and it was completely different. And also at that time there were periods for 1 week there was no network even for the phone, so you couldn't even think of some internet. So now it's kind of easy. You can message, call friends, or I usually, when I feel bad, I just go to one of the cafes and have a cake and coffee. That always make me feel better.
Oh, that's your happy place in that moment.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much for being so open towards that in general, for sharing your experience. And for also mentioning again, like, hey, obviously I love my life. I love being here. I'm supposed to be here. It feels 100%. So I do belong here, but there are days where I'm just like, okay, everything just sucks. I don't want to be here anymore. What the heck am I actually doing here? And I do think that, and that's actually interesting, because you do call Zambia your home. It feels like home, like everything, right?
Yeah.
But still there are moments, because you do have part of your family or part of your heart, a little piece is still in Czech Republic. Even though you're living in Africa since a couple of years already, those moments, they will always catch up with you. And it doesn't matter if it's 15 years, if it's 20 years, if it's 5 years. So I'm really happy that you brought up this topic, that you've mentioned this, that there will be moments in your life where you, like, as I've mentioned, okay, what the heck am I actually doing here? But that you will also get over it, because I do think that this is very important, that this is just in that very moment. You just have to soak it in. You have to deal with it. But then the next day, you'll be fine again. And this just comes and goes. Sometimes, I don't know, in your experience, how you feel about it, but sometimes it catches up with you quite bad, and you're pretty homesick, and you are, or at least out of my experience, you're questioning your path. And it might take a while until you realize, okay, this is just like a moment I'm having here right now. And then sometimes it's just a little mini thought, and you're able to shake it off quite fast.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes it's just kind of afterthought, but sometimes it's like, oh my God, what's happening? Like, but I think it's important to note that like this will happen to anywhere we live, because even though sometimes like I'm annoyed something, I can give you example. What I'm hating right now about Zambia is because the rainy season ended, and so it meaning it stopped rain, and now all the neighbors are burning their rubbish on the yards, and it's just like smoke and smell, and I hate it, because not only because of the smell, but also like, you know, the environmental implication of that, because of course there is a garbage truck coming every Friday. That's why we don't burn, but people prefer to burn their rubbish in the yard, and then, you know, you have small baby, it goes to his bedroom and you can't sit on your veranda. So at that time I feel like but yeah, that's, I guess, in Czech Republic, when I am there, there are other things which I'm like, oh, I want to be back in Zambia. How long I'm still staying here? So it's it doesn't matter where we live, but there will be always things which are annoying us, and there will be things which we love. And I think that's part of the human experience.
Definitely. Yeah, it's a great experience. I mean, especially that you do learn a lot, as I mentioned before, about yourself, and that a human being is quite adaptable, I must say, to different circumstances in life. And also what I've learned is that taking things too serious. So I like to think that the person I was before meeting Nacho, before moving abroad, before all this, like 7 years ago, is a completely different person to the person I am nowadays. So I've grown, I've grew so much. Actually, sitting here right now with you, talking to you, exchanging experiences, that I can say I am beyond proud of myself. And I do think that's also important, to sit back sometimes and to realize what you have achieved in the last few years, where you are nowadays, and just be proud of yourself. Enjoy the moment, realize that this is where you're supposed to be. And that's also what's helping me, especially in those moments where I feel sad, where I feel homesick, where I feel overwhelmed with everything going on, where I'm sick of talking English the whole time to Nacho because it's not my mother tongue. I just want to throw any German words at him in that very moment. You know, to just realize, okay, listen, you got all the way here. Be proud of yourself. You moved to Zambia, you met your nowadays husband, you do have a kid together. What happened between you meeting your husband and having a family in Zambia?
Well, that will be also another story full of turns.
I love it.
After I met my husband, Chris, we moved together quite quickly, and we were in the period of being in love and everything being amazing, and it was super exciting. But we also had our first arguments because of our different cultures, and this is how I start to dig deeper into myself and the relationship. And I think this was the ultimate beginning of my journey, where I'm now being a relationship coach, also helping other women in intercultural relationship to figure out the differences because of what was happening to me in the past. So I mentioned I had a partner from Italy, and I was the dominant one in the relationship. It was always as I wanted. He always let me to have it my way. And then when I started the relationship with Chris, I continued being the same way as I always was. I was not reflecting about the things I am doing. It was the only way I knew. And suddenly, having a different partner who had a completely different character, things start coming up, and I start to question, like, if the way I am behaving, if it's the best for the relationship, if it's fair. And actually, that was the point. I like to say that's when I started learning about relationship. And I think this is something we should be learning at school, because I don't know how about you, but I felt I was completely unprepared for a relationship. I didn't know how to make the relationship successful. So we had our first arguments with Chris. The most famous argument I also shared with my client was because of TV. And it was a perfect example of a culture difference, like me coming from a culture when we could never have a TV in our room, and TV was always switched off unless you were watching it. But for him, like TV was kind of a symbol of home. So we had these crazy arguments about TV, but we managed everything, and it was still the in love phase, which was very exciting. And at that time, also my visa in Zambia was finishing, and I was looking for a new job, and I couldn't get it at the time. So I started sending CVs, and I got eventually a job in Mongolia, which is the country of my dreams, right?
Oh.
Yeah, you see, I told you there will be lots of twists in this story.
So what, wait, you were dating already, and then you got a job offer in Mongolia after your visa was about to expire, or did it expire already?
Yeah, so it was about to expire in December. So I think I got this job somewhere in mid-December, and I had to travel from Zambia. I think it was 24th of December because it was Christmas Day for Czech Republic. And I remember I was in a bus from the city we live in to Lusaka, which is 8-hour journey, and I was eating our traditional Czech potato salad from a plastic jar. So I remember very well. And yeah, so it was fun. It was Christmas. So I flew at the time. I still have some of my things, I think, in Tanzania. So I flew to Tanzania, got my last things, and then I flew for a couple of days in Czech Republic. So it was fun because Tanzania was hot, Zambia was hot, 34 degrees. Then I came to winter in Czech Republic, and on the 1st of January, I was flying to Ulaanbaatar. I arrived. It was minus 32 degrees. And I spent there 6 months. So at that time, we never saw each other, like physically. We were on the phone. We were in the typical long distance relationship. But we managed, and I managed to find my way back to Zambia after 6 or 7 months. So I came back. And actually, this period in Mongolia was amazing, and I have very, very strong feelings for Mongolia as well. So it's something like, I love Zambia, but Mongolia, it's also has a special place in my heart. So we were in this like long distance relationship, but we were then all excited. We passed this 7 months, and I was back in Zambia. I had a job, but on the other side of the country. And Zambia is huge. So from just from capital, which is kind of in the middle, going to the provinces, we are talking of like 7 to 12 hours bus drives. So basically, we were in the same country, but the journey between where I was and where he was basically about 17 hours. So then that's when we enter, I think, the hardest period of our relationship, and where I also learned most things about myself and the relationship in general. We had lots of wonderful moments when we were meeting in Lusaka, or we went for like visit Victoria Fall, but it was hard to be still long distance, and especially in the same country. And we had periods when we had a huge arguments, like overnight, when it looked like we might even split, and I spent nights crying. But we always managed to stand, and I think that's one of the great things I love about my husband, and is how I know that he was serious about me and he loved me, that he would, even if we argue, he would never, for example, hang up phone on me, or he would never stop communicating. So even if he was upset, really upset, he would still like pick up the phone and talk to me. And I think that's like how we managed. We stayed in this kind of long-term, long-distance relationship. I think it was almost 2 years, actually. It was hard, but we were meeting every 3 weeks or 4 weeks in Lusaka, because the distance was really far, and we were on the phone every day. So this is, I can't imagine being in a long distance relationship without speaking to the person every day. And we managed to do that even in Mongolia, and there was 7-hour time difference. So that was hard, but we managed. And in 2019, I find out I was pregnant, and my doctor here in Kitwe, in the town where we live, he basically prohibited me traveling because I was traveling a lot for a job that would mean like basically every day I was on at least like 10 to 12 hours bus drive from one city to another. So he said, no, you need to stop traveling. And that's how I remained in Kitwe, where we lived. I never went back to where I was working. Just my colleagues brought me my luggage and I was working from home. And then eventually our son was born, and of course we remained living where we live. We changed houses in between. We got our own house, and our son is now 2.5. We live in our own house, which we work on since the time we got it, and try to do the best with our family and with our lives. Yeah, that was in a quick summary what happened in the last 6 years.
It's quite a lot, especially thinking about that you went from dating and being together physically to long distance relationship for 2 years. And I can imagine that especially the step from, okay, you're used to seeing each other most probably almost every day, to okay, having a long distance relationship and seeing each other every 3 to 4 weeks, that must have been quite difficult. But I'm glad you managed. I'm happy to see that you figured it out. You do so you are self-employed now, right? So you do work from home 100%, or what's the status quo?
So I work from home 100%. So my main thing is what I focus on, and what I started last year is on the relationship coaching and mentoring. So that's my own thing, which I try to work for myself and the women who are in intercultural relationship. But in addition to that, I also, because I mentioned it in Uganda, I started doing like the international cooperation. And I also, when I was in Mongolia, I was doing humanitarian aid. So this kind of work, I always enjoyed, like working in different cultures, working with different people. So I still have about 30% contract with one of my previous employers. And I work from home in the same, like a non-governmental organization, just because I enjoy doing that kind of work. And in addition to that, I also write articles for a couple of Czech magazines and radios. For example, I do interviews with women who live abroad and have interesting projects. So now I have a season of articles of Czech women living in Asia. Before it was in Africa. So this is also my way how to travel, because now I don't travel much and I really miss it. So talking to women who live now in Thailand or Sri Lanka or South Korea, it's very exciting, and it also contributes a bit to my goal that before I started to do the relationship coaching, I started my blog when my son was about, I think, 9 months, and the blog was mostly about life in Africa. And what I wanted to show is that Africa is not only the poverty, the animals, the diseases. That's what people usually hear from media, but that Africa can be also very different, and to kind of show that it can be a normal place to live, and that lots of stereotypes are not really true. And that comes also to the intercultural relationship, because I don't know how is it in Germany, but in Czech Republic, we often hear only the worst case scenarios, the negative stories, how some lady was married to a guy, I don't know, from Saudi Arabia, then they got divorced, she couldn't get her kids back, and all these stories. But we don't hear of the stories of, now I have in mind, a Czech lady who is married to a guy from Madagascar. They lived there for 24 years and they are happily married with 3 kids, and nobody hears that. So that's what I try to do also with these interviews, and why I decided to work with women in an intercultural relationship is to show that it can work, and it's not that it's doomed that any intercultural relationship will fail, because there are so many intercultural relationships that actually work.
The articles you're writing, they're not in English, aren't they?
It's in Czech. Yeah.
They are in English?
In Czech.
Czech. Okay.
Yeah.
But I will link that if it's okay for you. Do they have an online website or anything for everyone who's interested and who's speaking Czech to read them as well?
Yeah. I can share the links, and then I have
Perfect.
some articles, and I think some also what I do on my like own YouTube. I talk to women with partners from abroad, so I can also share those are in English, because the relationship coaching and my relationship blog, now I do everything in English, so I can share both of it. Yeah.
Perfect. And I will link it in the side notes of the podcast episode, as well as in the description of the YouTube video. And for everyone who's interested to learn more about you, about your work, about what you're doing, what's the best way to contact you?
Yeah, so basically via email or Instagram, I think those are the easiest. And I have my website, so there is also a contact. So I think it's actually very easy to find me if you like look for my name, Zuzana Mukumai. Instagram is the one I am most, and then of course the YouTube and the website. So I will share all that.
Amazing. So to wrap it up, to get to an end, I mean, we've talked about quite a lot about your love story, about your love to Zambia, and what brought you where you are at nowadays. I know this is a difficult question, but if you could give one advice to anyone who's maybe in a similar situation, who had made similar experiences as you did, what advice would it be?
Mhm. Maybe I have to say two.
Okay.
One is that often our brains and the way as we are as humans, we always tend to think forward. And often it's in terms of what might go wrong. So, for example, if we are in the beginning of the relationship with a man from a completely different culture or even different religion, we worry, I would say, too much of what might happen. We wonder, will this work? What my family will say if we have kids? How we will bring them up? And we tend to get lost in all these assumptions. And I love this quote for Mark Twain, which goes something like, "I had lots of problems in my life, but most of them never happened." So I think it's when we are in love, like we are committed to the relationship and committed to each other, most of the things we will figure them out. Like I can also think lots of examples from my own relationship. When I am not a Christian, my husband is a Catholic, and I was worried what will happen when we have a child. Will he be baptized? Will he be going to church? And I was like, what? And but then basically this is not a problem at all. So that's the advice number one, that sometimes we tend to overthink, and then when it's good to have some kind of clarity about things which can be the deal breaker for you. That's something which you cannot like overstep, but other things there will be always space for negotiation and finding what works for your family. And this is what I love about multicultural families, is that you can always create your own ways.
Mhm.
And the second one was, I know lots of women who get a partner from different countries, especially when it's really different context. The question of like, does he really love me? Is he serious? And then there is often the question when people come from, maybe one is from a richer country and one is from poorer. There are all the misconceptions and stereotypes about like, is he really genuine, or is he with me because of trying to go to Europe, trying to get visa? And I know this is kind of stereotype, but it also happens. And I think it's important, like that would be my second advice, that it's always important to try to learn about the culture of the other person, and to learn how the things are going in that country. Because there are lots of women who maybe go just for holidays in a country they don't know much, and then it's so easy to fall in love with somebody without really knowing how the things are working. And I know all sorts of stories. Like I know the couples who they could not communicate to each other because they have a different language, but they figured out they are married and everything is working perfectly. But then I also know the couples who could not communicate, and then they find out they can't actually live together. So there in the intercultural relationship, there are all sorts of combination, and it's impossible to say which one will work, which one will not. It's always up to you to know, because the one who is in the relationship will know if the relationship is serious. But I just want to say it's good to know how it works in the particular culture and what is kind of normal for that culture. I can give a specific example in Zambia, for example, like what would raise a red flag for me if I start dating a Zambian guy and then he expects me to pay. That would be like the first red flag I would have, because I don't know any Zambian woman who would ever accept this, like that customer, it is the Zambian guy pays. Of course, it's changing kind of a bit now that maybe they share. But if there is a man who expects the woman to pay everything, then I would be a bit worried that something is not right. So these kind of things are important to know, and it will help you to see if like the relationship is genuine and to possibly avoid some heartbreaks and some big disappointments.
Did you actually, we didn't talk about that, but when you told your family and friends that you are dating a guy from Zambia, how did they react though?
So the first thing was they were, especially my parents, they were in kind of denial, that they thought, oh, because they loved my previous partner. So they knew him. We were together since I was 21 years old. I knew his family. He knew my family. So all my friends, all my family, they loved him. So it was hard for them that we split up. And then when I said like I am with Chris and that he's Zambian, that he's black, I don't know how to say it differently. Like at first they were in denial that it will be something just after a few weeks I will get tired of him and we will break up. And actually everything changed like when we got like our son and we got married. Then now everything is fine, and that's I love this about Czech Republic. There is lots of misconceptions and lots of stereotypes. One could say there is like lots of racist thoughts going on, but then in my like personal experience, and most of the people, when they meet the actual person, then realize they are normal people, then they are like really open and generous, and they welcome the people in the family. So that's what is nice about the Czech Republic. But in the beginning but also in the beginning when I was dating an Italian guy, which is not that far, but I still remember the first reaction of my grandfather, which was not positive at all. So I think it's generally like whatever foreign which is not known so well, it's not accepted that well, because we are not used, especially in Czech Republic, unless in Prague or Brno, in the biggest cities, like we don't have so many foreigners living in the smaller towns or in the villages.
Yeah. It's actually very interesting that you're mentioning the exact same point, because I've talked last year, I think in September, I've talked to Lubomira. Maybe you know her as well. She has, her husband is from Egypt, and they do have a family as well. And she also said that she made the exact same experience as you did with her family, that her family had a lot of stereotypes as well. When she told them, listen, I'm dating in Egypt, and she didn't even tell her family that she was dating him for quite a while. I think even 1 year, as she kept it as a secret until she got pregnant. And the thing is, she said the exact same thing, that Czechs are very like, you might think there's the stereotype thinking, but once they get to know the person, and once they understand the whole concept that obviously you're happy, this person makes you happy, you know what you're doing, you're grown up, so that this is not a big deal anymore. But in the beginning, especially in her case, she was very afraid to tell her family. So much so that she kept it as a secret until she couldn't any longer. So yeah, it's interesting how different cultures are just having different mindsets and handling specific things in different ways.
And if I can just jump, because we usually talk about the stereotypes on our side, but then also there are lots of stereotypes on also the side of the partner usually. So for my partner is Zambian, and his family was also not very happy about him dating a white woman, because they had also all these negative experiences of relatives or friends who went to the UK, then they got a British lady, then she kept the child there. So it's kind of, reverse, as I was saying. We hear the stories about how the husbands keep the babies, and then they hear here in Zambia the stories of like how the wives take the kids. So it works both ways.
Yeah, that's good that you're mentioning this again. That's true, definitely. But in your case nowadays, like, his family is accepting you, your family is accepting him, so you're blending families basically, right? After all, happy end.
Well, our it's a bit we are a bit unusual in this, because my husband's parents, they passed away a long time ago, so he doesn't have parents, and he have some, like, he has siblings and some other relatives, but they are not the typical like African family as we imagine it, that they would meet each other all the time. They don't meet each other very often, they speak on the phone, so I am not really in touch with them, which all my Zambian girlfriends are like envying me, because they say it's always issues from the other people's family. So we are basically free of us, which it's advantage in that there are no people talking to our relationship, how we do things, but also disadvantage that, for example, if we would need somebody to help us with our child, we don't have this option. And then my family, they know him, but they, for example, never met, because he never visited Czech Republic, and they never visited here. So they know each other through WhatsApp, but they never met in person.
Wow, that's also interesting. Okay. So I think we could keep on talking for much longer. But what I will do, as I've mentioned, I'm gonna link everything in the description of the video, in the side notes of the podcast episode. So for everyone who's watching, for everyone who's listening, if you would like to know more about Zuzana, you know where to contact her. I had a great conversation with you. I've learned so much. And again, especially the topic of stereotypes, the communication we had in the end, I would have loved to go deeper into that. But maybe that's something for another episode, if you would be up for that. And I do love what you're doing. I do love that you built your own community, that you're helping a woman in intercultural relationships finding their path as well by sharing your knowledge, your experience. And obviously there's a lot of experience. I mean, I'm glad that we've talked about your past 12 years in 1 hour and 10 minutes, I think. And I'm really grateful that we had this conversation today. Thank you so much, Zuzana.
Yeah, thank you as well. And I would love talking more. So I'm definitely for another episode on stereotypes or life in Africa, or going deeper into the relationship, because it's so interesting, and it's a great way of also discovering things about ourselves. Living abroad and having a partner from different countries, it really makes you question some things you never questioned, and it makes you grow as a person. So I love talking to you as well.
Thank you for watching. If you like this episode, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, to share this podcast, to spread the word, and to
subscribe.